John Dewey grew up in Burlington, Vermont, where he lived with his family and attended public school. He then attended the University of Vermont, where he graduated in 1879 with his bachelor's degree. Immediately after graduating, Dewey began teaching at a high school for 2 years. While teaching at the high school, Dewey submitted an essay to the Journal of Speculative Philosophy, and it was accepted. During this time, he began to realize that philosophy and education involved a more practical, experimental attempt to improve the human condition. Realizing he wanted to continue his education in philosophy, John Dewey headed off to Baltimore, Maryland, where he attended Johns Hopkins University and graduated with his PhD in 1884. Post-graduation, John Dewey accepted a teaching position at the University of Michigan, where he would end up teaching for 10 years. While at the University of Michigan, John Dewey wrote his first 2 books, one in 1887 and one in 1888. During this time in the 19th century, he began to denounce public schools' curriculum, where he claimed that schools were failing to teach children how to use knowledge and relate it to their everyday life. In 1894, John Dewey left the University of Michigan and then went to the University of Chicago, where his early idealisms gave way to the basics of the theory of knowledge, as well as helping to develop the American school of thought known as pragmatism. Pragmatists believed that reality must be experienced, therefore students must interact with their environment in order to adapt and learn. This was John Dewey's educational philosophy. In 1896, John Dewey founded the University Laboratory School, which was an elementary school where he could experiment how children learn and how he could create change within the schools. He also continued to study his ideas of the pedagogical method, and later, in 1904, he resigned. He was then invited to join the Department of Philosophy at Columbia University, where he would spend the rest of his professional career teaching. He then retired in 1930. Although John Dewey retired, he continued to work as a philosopher and an educator, and was able to create many different theories of education. While studying education, he didn't like the basic ways of teaching, therefore he created what is known as the progressive education theory, which is a hands-on style approach to learning. Through the progressive education theory, he saw learning by doing, and therefore this would help develop practical life skills which would be crucial to children's education. Also, teachers and students must work together to create a better learning environment within the classroom. John Dewey had a democratic approach to his educational philosophy, where both students and teachers were considered equal within the classroom. John Dewey also said that teachers shouldn't be seen as educators, but rather as facilitators, which would help the students by giving them opportunities to discover themselves and to develop as independent learners. Teachers should sit back and watch their students in the natural habitat of the classroom, while essentially only being there to help them with problem-solving skills. He also said that school should be a place that reflects the society that the child lives in, therefore creating child-centered learning that essentially surrounds the interests and needs of the child. Overall, with John Dewey's approach to education, you may see students within a classroom working together to problem solve or even think about different ways to understand the content, rather than the teacher standing up front in the classroom lecturing them. Today, his views and theories are used by educators and teachers in an attempt to make schools and their classrooms more relevant to the modern world. John Dewey is now known as one of the most influential figures and philosophers in the history of American education, and one of his most famous quotes is, "Education is not preparation for life, but rather education is life itself."